ANC leader, who was South Africa's ambassador to France at the time of his passing, died reportedly after falling from the 22nd floor of a hotel in Paris. Let's get you more on what we know so far. Bring in Sfiso Buthelezi, who's the family spokesperson and joins us now via our video link. Sir, thanks very much indeed for your time at this difficult time for the family. We really do appreciate it. I wonder if we can begin with whether or not any more information has been forthcoming from authorities that side about what might have happened earlier this week.
Good morning to you. Good morning to the viewers. Good morning to the South Africans. Thank you very much for this opportunity. Indeed, it's a very difficult time for us as a family in Federal, but it's even more difficult for his wife, it was my sister, Sifiso Buthelezi. It's a very difficult time indeed for her. It's always very difficult to deal with death in a family, but even more difficult to deal with death in these circumstances and in a foreign country. So that all makes the situation that we are facing a very, very difficult one. But about the developments, I don't know where you are, but let me just say briefly what has happened since the tragedy happened. We've had interaction with the police. They came to the ambassador's residence to brief Mrs. Mthethwa, and I attended that meeting about their interim findings, or perhaps let's say the progress in investigations. And that was 2 days ago, basically where they were saying at that stage that they've been to the hotel where this tragedy happened. They've been to the room that the ambassador said to have booked in, and they have watched the cameras. So the most important thing for them there was to try and see whether there was somebody else who might have been in that room. That means, was there somebody perhaps who might have gone into the room before the ambassador, or somebody who came after the ambassador? So they say what they saw there in the cameras. Definitely there was nobody who entered the room before or after the ambassador had entered the room. So that's a fact coming from the police. And obviously they gave us things that they got, which were two cell phones, ambassador's cell phones, his jacket, cap, and the remote. So they left those things. I must say that they've been quite professional in dealing with Mrs. Mthethwa. Remember, when this thing happened, she was all by herself in this house, and she needed to report to the police. And thanks God, Mrs. Mthethwa was very fluent in Africa. You see, South Africa coming out in French, so she was able to interact and tell them exactly what happened. So I think that helped. But she was all by herself. But the police came here, they fetched her, they went to the police station on the day of the tragedy. So we really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we can only imagine the absolute anguish she must have endured during that time. I suppose, given the information from authorities there that there was nobody who seemed to have entered the room before or after the incident, that answers the question around whether or not the family suspects any foul play.
As a family, we always suspect foul play until this thing is resolved. I'm just saying it's natural, especially if you take a person of the character of Ambassador Mthethwa. The investigations are ongoing. We want to play it that way, and yeah, it's natural. But I was just saying that that's the facts that the police gave us when they met us.
Sure. Do we have any details around when we can expect the ambassador's remains back at home, especially because we know in our own cultures certain rituals need to be undertaken before there's that final rite of passage, the final send over, so to speak, for the Mthethwa family and anybody else who might have close associations with the ambassador?
Yeah. Again, in the briefing by the police, they said to us they think that they test that they think they're able to release the boat to us. Remember that the boat at the moment is in the carpet and more. So they're still busy with autopsy, and once they've done all that they're supposed to do, then they'll be able to release the body to the family. They think that the latest will be Tuesday. I'm sure they can do it earlier, and once that has been done, obviously must just with DECO, especially the embassy here, also try to organize then the taking of the body back home.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure you must have, like many other people who heard this shocking news earlier this week, had a number of questions about even what might have led the ambassador to his final moments, or at least let me say, you might have questions about his final moments. Were there any signs, at least even from the ambassador's wife, of him being in distress at any point whilst he was there in Paris, especially because there had been reports of her receiving some kind of worrying messages in the lead up to this news becoming public?
That's the question that I first asked myself. I speak to the ambassador quite often. I say I graduated him from being a brother-in-law. He's a brother for all intents and purposes. So we do talk about many things. So for me, there was no suspicion that there may be a problem. But having asked Mrs. Mthethwa, PDC herself, were there signs that there may be some problems with the ambassador? He says, you know that the ambassador is a person, his character. Also, he's a person who's reserved in general. So it's not as easy just to read him. But according to her, there was nothing outward that we could talk about it. He's in the corner, he's not himself. There was nothing seriously speaking which you could see that he might be maybe going through some stress. That's one. It's true that he received a message from the ambassador, but it was when this thing was happening. So it's not that something that came before.
Are authorities in Paris giving you an idea of how they're approaching their investigations? You mentioned earlier today that I think there were 2 phones that they found in the ambassador's room. Is there anything else that they might have shared with you about, or at least that might shed some kind of light into his thinking and what was happening in the moments leading up to this tragedy?
No. They gave us phones. Remember I said at the beginning, 2 phones, his coat, his cap, and the remote. That's what they just gave to us. They didn't tell us that this we got next to the bed, outside the room, and so on. They just said these are the things that we got for the ambassador. But I was saying earlier that on Saturday, before this thing happened, there was a commemoration of the First World War, where South African soldiers participated. And there's a video which is circulating, which we got as a family on this, where he was busy with Indam. Indam is the Zulu dance, and something that he doesn't often does, but he was in a very jolly mood and Indam. And just before that, they've come back with Mrs. Mthethwa from Monaco, where the ambassador was presenting his credentials. But again, when they were down there, he was in a very, very good mood. So there was nothing saying this may happen. It took all of us by complete surprise. In fact, we didn't want to believe it, and we still don't want to believe it, that we don't have Ambassador Mthethwa now.
Really difficult moment indeed. Sfiso Buthelezi, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us.
Before I let you go,
Go ahead.
I think it will be amiss of us as a family if we don't thank you as media people for having carried this story. And I must say that what we have seen, for me, that you have given it the respect that it deserves, and we appreciate that. But we also want to thank the South Africans for the words of condolences that they are sending, the messages that they are sending to us, people from all walks of life, including the president of the country, including the minister of DELCOMS, Honorable Lamola, the president, deputy president, ministers, leaders of other political parties, clergy, and the ordinary South Africans who have just showed us how they love and how they cared about our departed brother. We really appreciate that. That's how we Africans do these things. When there's death, we respect it and always gather around the person who's aggrieved. We really appreciate that. We want to thank you all.
And we appreciate that feedback. Dr. Buthelezi, once again, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Sfiso Buthelezi, the spokesperson for Nathi Mthethwa's family in the wake, of course, of the ambassador's untimely passing earlier this week. Still so many unanswered questions about his final moments. But of course, as you can imagine, the family trying to manage with the details surrounding this tragedy in the lead up to preparations for his final send-off. We'll certainly keep watching that story for you very closely as we get more information surrounding what might have happened.